Good day, everyone. TISO International Association's Affiliate Network Professional Council is pleased to present this webinar titled Action Agenda Actions for the Future of the TISO Profession. Our speakers are Gabriela Klitschkova and Denise Murray. We're very pleased to welcome you all to this webinar. My name is George Kornpas, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Today's presentation will last 60 minutes and include a question and answer period. To enter a question, simply type your question into the box on the lower left side of your screen and then click Send button. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. The first speaker is Denise Murray, former chair of the TISO Summit Steering Committee and past president of TISO International in 1996 to 1997, a professor emerita at Macquarie University, Australia, and San Jose State University in California. Denise has worked in language education in Thailand, the UK, the USA, and her native Australia. Her research and practice centers on the intersection of language education, society, and technology, language education policy, and leadership in language education. Our second presenter, Gabriela Klitschkova, a former member of the TISO Summit Steering Committee, is the chair of the Department of English at the Faculty of Education, University of West Bohemia in Plzeň, Czech Republic. She's a teacher educator, language consultant, and frequent presenter at national and international ELT conferences. She's a past member of the TESOL Board of Directors 2012 to 2015, and she's running for the TESOL president position this coming year. And with that, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. This is Gabby speaking from the Czech Republic, and I'll give you a brief introduction to the webinar before Denise joins us in and does her little first part. And we'll be going back and forth during the session. So to give you an idea what's ahead of us in the next 45 minutes, the webinar is organized around three things that we are all well familiar with, more lesson planning, and we'll talk what's into, through, and beyond. We'll talk what's behind the action agenda. We're going to look inside, and in the last area, we're going to go beyond, and we're going to look at how we can use it with our affiliates in our planning and in our doings. Maybe some takeaways from the webinar. Denise stressed that I should point out that we are not supporting one-time use cups, but we just have this image to illustrate. There are going to be three takeaways. Hopefully by the time this webinar is over, you'll understand the purpose of the agenda. You will know its 5 priorities, and you will gain ideas how the agenda can inform the future planning of your affiliate. Maybe to know where people are joining us from, if you can type in the chat box where you're from, so we get a sense of how international this community is. And in the map, you can see where Denise is. In San Jose, Valerie, who started the webinar, is in Alexandria at the TISO office. I'm here in the heart of Europe, and George is in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh. So now can you use the text box and the chat box on your screen to let us know where all you are from? There'll be people from Sudan, US, Saudi, any other places? Different parts of the world. Thank you for typing it in. And now I'll pass the microphone to Denise, who's going to take us to the behind stage of the agenda.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'm glad to see you here. except I can't see you, but you know what I mean. I can see your names at least, so welcome. The summit that was held concerning the future of the TESOL profession is the event that led to the action agenda that we're going to talk about. And the reason that TESOL International began thinking about the future of the profession was they were about to celebrate 50 years of the existence of the TESOL International. And so people started thinking about where have we come in those 50 years and what do the next 50 years hold for us. And so an initiative from the board was to have a summit that would include people from around the world to try and discuss what we all believed should be the future for the profession. That this would be something that would be based on the knowledge that we have from research, but also the practice of the vast number of people who are teaching English as a second foreign language, whatever you want to call it. And this wasn't just about the subject matter of TESOL or about TESOL International. It's about the profession, about those of us who practice in some way. Some aspect of our work has to do with learners of English. So that includes people like publishers, it includes policymakers, it includes researchers, test makers, teachers, teacher educators, administrators. So it's a vast range of people that we are referring to when we talk about TESOL professionals. So the purpose was to try and map out where we should be heading in the future based on the best knowledge that we have from all of the people who are involved in this enterprise. We started with some guiding principles, and they were in inquiry, equity, and professionalism. And I will describe those in great detail because they underpin everything that happened in the whole process of trying to interact with the world of English language teaching. So by inquiry, we're talking about the fact that TESOL practice and policy needs to be inquiry-based. That practice should inform research, and research should inform practice and policy, rather than research being something that an academic does and gets credit for writing in a paper for, but we aren't able to access it as those of us who are practicing the profession. So TESOL was very interested in being sure that we had a research inquiry base to everything that we do as a profession. We also have a commitment to equity, that English is an additional language and is not there to supplant the home language or languages. And also the awareness that the practice of TESOL occurs in so many different contexts. Just look at where everybody here comes from, with varying practices, varying cultures, and different accesses to resources. We're very aware that resources are not the same for people who are in different contexts from, say, where I am, sitting in the middle of Silicon Valley. And the final guiding principle to which we were committed was professionalism. That is that we should have a cohesive community of practice that understood the knowledge base that we have, and that we focused on continual professional learning that was based on the practice and on reflection about that practice. We also decided that as well as having these principles, we would have 4 content areas that people could discuss in order to find out where we needed to go in terms of the content of our profession. And the first theme was futurology, which may sound a little bit, futuristic, but futurology is a huge field which talks about the mega trends things like globalization, the migration of people, the dislocation of people, about inequities, about technology. So these are the mega trends of what people are envisioning is coming down the line, and that we will need to address if we're thinking about the future of the profession. The second theme was English in multiculturalism, and that I think I've already explained when I talked to you about equity, that English exists in a world of multiculturalism and multilingualism. The third one was reimagining English competence. Rather than having the native speaker as the ideal that everyone should reach when they are learning English, we recognize that English is not a unified one thing, but multiple Englishes. And therefore we needed to think about what does that mean to say one is competent English. And the last one is one which I'm sure is very dear to the hearts of people who are in affiliate leadership, is the profession as a change agent. How can the profession change people's perceptions about what learning language is all about? Because we know there are many misconceptions out there. So thinking about that, the summit was designed to think about these 4 topics and then to use the guiding principles, staying true to those commitments. And the summit wasn't just one event. It began in December of 2016, and the participants who, as I mentioned, were this vast range of different professionals around the world, they met online and discussed those 4 topics, the 4 themes that I mentioned. And then in, what was it, February? Yes, February in 2017, I should remember that. We met in Athens. Not all of the people who've been participating, of course, only 200, but the 200 represented policymakers, teacher educators, researchers, test makers, and so on. And it represented 64 different countries. And we had speakers, 12 speakers who spoke to those 4 themes and around the guiding principles. And then the talks were very short, and then people were at discussion tables, discussed them. The discussions were recorded, and all of that information we used later. Then following the summit, there was further online discussion to take it further and bring the discussion from Athens to the vast range of people who were participating virtually and hadn't been able to be at the summit, although it was streamed live, and so people could actually interact if they were able to do it in real time. So this is the data that the steering committee had. All of those discussions online, all of the discussions from 2 days of intensive talk about where the profession should go. And of course, as well, the knowledge base that we already have. And so from that, we were able to develop the action agenda. And it talks about the summit, then it talks about the state of the profession currently and the misconceptions that people have, the way we are devalued in so many contexts, that, people say anyone can teach English. And then we have the priorities that came out of those discussions, and then the actions that came out of trying to meet those priorities. And then we have a section about stakeholder involvement, and then a call to action, which is what we are doing here, is calling you all to act on the agenda. So we started with in the action agenda, the knowledge base. And yes, that's what it felt like. We were overwhelmed with the amount of data, as you can imagine. But we, as good researchers, we filtered through that. We found the themes. We worked very hard on trying to use this knowledge base and the data that we had. The knowledge base was the piece that we already know, which is transparent to all of you, but isn't always to a new teacher, and certainly is not to policymakers and often to our administrators. So the knowledge base are things like, as English language teaching has grown, the profession has developed a robust research-driven base, and so we know these things. Languages are complex and dynamic. They develop variations based on how they're used and who is using them. So there's not just one English. We all know that using languages other than other languages facilitates learning of English in the classroom. It's not a hindrance to it. We also know that multilingualism is the norm in most regions of the world. We also know that the age at which students start learning isn't the only variable in determining their success. Many other things affect how people are able to learn English. And the last one of the knowledge base, and these are expanded in great detail in the action agenda, is that the idealized native speaker is an absolutely ineffective role model for developing materials and assessments, because that is not the real world of using English, for one thing, and also it is not achievable by most people, and most people do not need that in order to interact interculturally. Okay, Gabby, I think it's you.
Yes, so we're going to do a quick assessment of where we stand in our own context regarding the knowledge base. You can all see now those 6 points that Denise just mentioned. And as it's been said, it has been widely established knowledge base that is well familiar to professionals, but maybe not well recognized in all contexts. And we're just curious right now, if you review these briefly and share with us, which ones do you think are the least recognized in your own context, in the context of your affiliate? And if I speak for the Czech affiliate, it's definitely D, E, and F. Those are the 3 areas that are still not widely recognized by policies and even among some of the colleagues in the profession. So we'll give you about a minute to kind of review these and maybe share with us in the chat box on your screen which ones are those that are not recognized in your context despite the body of research that's available and the literature that we all have access to. Thank you, George. ENF, yep. Very typical for EFL world. How about some other contexts? Thank you, E, native speaker. I wonder where James is located. Oh, thank you, C. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Laurie, for BNC. Anybody else sharing their problems with us? Okay, maybe we'll move on now to look closely at the 5 priorities The knowledge base, as Denise pointed out, is outlined in the agenda, which we'll refer back to towards the end of the webinar, and you'll be able to download the documents for your own use. And let's look at the priorities. As we've said, there are 5 priorities. They all look at different things. And now, for the next about 10 minutes, we'll share individual priorities. And we don't have time to look closely at all the actions under the priorities, but we'll always provide an example. And then later, we'll share how you can use the whole agenda, as we already mentioned with your affiliate. So we'll go back and forth. So it will be a little bit of dynamics in our talk now. So the first one, as you can see, is the first priority of the agenda is to strengthen the status and the visibility of the profession. And you have a sample action on the screen that you can read for yourself. But as we all know, TESOL, or our profession, has been there for a number of decades, but it's not well recognized. The know-how and all the things that we have available, about language learning and professionalism is not well shared, and we need to all work together to strengthen the status and visibility. So eventually, different stakeholders and policymakers and even the general public will appreciate us as TESOL professionals. And one way of building a community that actually communicates our know-how and our knowledge is through facilitating online or face-to-face opportunities. It's a great source of building and empowering professionals, but also a way of sharing knowledge outside the community. And one of the things that goes across the whole agenda is the use of social media and the value of social media, not only in building the community of TESOL professionals, but also in advocating for our learners and for our profession and sharing our expertise. And as I said, this is one of the actions, one of the 6 actions that are under strengthening the status and visibility of the profession. But we do need to work together to lift up the legitimacy of our profession. And we need to build our own confidence. And that can all happen through, as I've already said, through opportunities to exchange ideas and share the new knowledge that's coming out through research and our experiences, and communicating that with the outside world. And we're going to look at the second priority, Denise.
Right. So the second priority is redesign English language education programs to foster global engagement. While we know that many of the programs for professional development and for teacher education in our field are excellent and have an understanding of the knowledge base that we're talking about, we also know that not everybody comes into the field through effective and programs that really are helping the potential teacher become a true facilitator for their learners acquiring English for the real world out there, as opposed to an imagined world that no longer exists. So this is one of the action items that we need to be sure that the contemporary ideas of the knowledge base we were talking about before are the ones that are being used as the basis for helping teachers develop skills to teach English as a world language. And so that many of the myths that are around are not perpetuated through the language programs, the language teaching programs that learners engage in. This is a big challenge actually for us, because it is a way of actually trying to reflect on our own practice and whether we truly are practicing in whatever area of the profession we are, whether it's writing textbooks, whether it's developing tests, or being a teacher educator. Are we truly using current best knowledge about what learners need in the real world? Do we recognize that English is a lingua franca, English is no longer just owned by people like me who come from an English-speaking country, which is also multilingual because of immigration. So that's the area here. There are a number of other action items, but it's very focused on thinking about what we know and being sure that that is what is being used as the base for all of our teacher development. Gabby, over to you.
And here we are. The image clearly represents where we stand, maybe the challenges and complexities of English language teaching, and maybe we can look at it as socio-political waters in which we navigate. The third priority focuses on mobilizing leaders among ourselves, TESOL professionals, to address some of the issues that our learners experience and face, and also our own issues as English teaching professionals. Under this, we seek ways and opportunities for advocacy and addressing issues that impact our own learners and our colleagues and our own profession, as I've already said. The idea is that those in the profession who are educated in the teaching practices and how to carry out instruction also learn and how to advocate and how to raise voices when there is time to be heard and when policies need to be informed. So we as TESOL professionals become active participants in contributors to policies, to when policies are developed, when the rights of our learners are violated, when we ourselves are not recognized and are not treated properly. So we use our community, our knowledge, and our colleagues in the profession. And a part of it to develop the skills is addressed by the action step that talks about promoting professional growth opportunities to all educators throughout their career. So there's a constant and ongoing professional development that focuses on the profession itself, but also leadership skills and advocacy skills, and empowering future teachers in the teacher preparation programs and then professional development events to actually gain and develop skills to advocate for issues that are close to our hearts, which are learners and language learning and multilingualism in general. And Denise, up to you for now.
Okay, number 4 in the action agenda is to expand. Number 4, Gabby, can you advance it, please? Thank you. To expand the capacity for inclusive and comprehensive research, because research should not just be done in academic surroundings by people who want to do research. As I said right at the beginning, it needs to involve practice, because what is actually happening, what is teachers' work, what do teachers do, and we need to study that with teachers rather than, and teachers need to study it themselves and be reflective practitioners. But also we need to do research in policy issues. Textbook writers should be researching what is the need out that people have, rather than developing textbooks that are generic for anybody in anywhere in the world, so that they become so bland that they're uninteresting. So everybody needs to engage, everybody in the profession needs to engage in research. And it needs to be, as I said, comprehensive, all areas of the profession. And teachers should not be excluded from this. So that requires also collaborative research. But we must remember that, as I also said earlier, local needs are very different, and people have different ways of learning. So we can't think that there is only one way of doing everything. And a context that is, one of our colleagues on the steering committee was from Cameroon, where, They have classes that have a huge number of students in them, a very, very different setting from a private language school in England that has 12 students, and 12 students who have come from literature-rich families where there is books everywhere, opposed to maybe a rural, and these are stereotypes but not necessarily inaccurate, a rural child who does not have that access. So we need to take all of those different contexts into consideration to be sure that the research findings are applicable to local needs rather than trying to make them always applicable to the whole world. Gabby, then you're the next one.
And I'm here to wrap up the last priority, which is actually one of my favorite ones, although they're all important, but because this is an ongoing thing, something that actually provides answer to some of the challenges we face. And it talks about cultivating a culture of innovation that is responsive to global trends. And the idea is that we'll anticipate and act upon changes that impact English language education, that we stay informed and on top of things, that we collaborate in problem solving, and we do things to actually, rather than be reactive to what is happening in our own context and situations, to be proactive and informed and knowledgeable. And we do that through identifying and disseminating information on appropriate practices. And this is maybe unique to certain contexts. We all come from different contexts where maybe there's a high access to resources, and maybe there's a limited access to resources. But no matter where we are, we should always seek and ways to disseminate the most important information that will allow TESOL professionals to, as I said, stay on top of things and build skills and knowledge, and to advocate and to be forward-looking and leading their professional doings in the right direction. Maybe to close out the 5 priorities, we're going to look at the different role that different stakeholders can play in addressing those 5 priorities. And now you're looking at a table that beautifully outlines the role of the different stakeholders in carrying out those priorities and making a difference and moving our profession forward. And if you look in the middle, these teacher associations, they are the only ones who have really dark color for 4 of those priorities. The darker the color, the bigger role the stakeholder can play in making an impact in those areas. And since this is a webinar for affiliates, you can see that there's a lot of potential, a lot of work for all of us to move the profession forward. Again, this is included in the final document. And now Denise is going to discuss closely what we can do with the agenda specifically. Denise?
Yes, okay. So what can we affiliates do in order to use the agenda? I mean, how is it usable is really probably a better question. Well, I think it can be used for planning for the future of affiliates, for their professional development, for their research, for their advocacy. So one of the suggestions that I have is that if you go to the document itself, you don't have to, well, I mean, it would be nice if you read all of the details. That provides background to support all of the action items, the priorities and the action items. But you could look at the priorities and look at the action items and ask yourself, do we do this? Do we do this action? Oh, yes, we do. How successful are we? What impact do we have in this area? Or, no, we don't. Is it something we could be doing in our context? Or is it something that no, we couldn't do in our context. We don't have the technology, for example. So it's a way of looking at how to plan for the things that you might want to do. For professional development, it provides rich data that you can use in order to direct the professional development that you want to have. For example, this is just one example. Use the themes that we used for the summit in a sort of mini summit for your affiliate, to have people explore all those ideas in a much more intensive time, very focused, rather than the usual conferences that we put on, where I've just come from our local affiliates one, where every hour, well, it's every 45 minutes, there is a new presentation. But instead of that, have a very focused number of topics where people have time to discuss it at length and actually come to grips with it, come to terms with how it could be, how they can deal with that challenge or issue within their own environment. The same for research. The content here provides many opportunities for researching the practices that are happening in your own affiliate, and because affiliates vary tremendously based on where they are, who is in it. Some have only high school teachers, some have only academics. I mean, you can use that in order to do research that is relevant to your particular context. So these are some sort of ways that the affiliates can use the agenda without necessarily having to take it all on board. You can use parts of it in many different constructive and innovative ways that fit your context and will actually move both your affiliate forward and also your members forward in their professionalism. So the whole goal of it really is to move the profession forward. You'll see that the agenda, as we talked about the various items that there, it is a goal for the future for everybody, but knowing that not everybody in the profession is at this place yet. But we as affiliates have the role of helping our professionals reach those final goals of what is best practice for every aspect of the profession. So those are some of the ideas that we have of how affiliates can be involved in using this as a resource. That's really what it is. It's a great resource that you can use in multiple different ways, as I said, for planning, for professional development, for research, and for advocacy. Because many of the things in the document, if you've got a challenge that a policymaker or administrator is saying you can't do X, you can go to the document and there will be a section that will answer that question probably, and you can show that the best knowledge of the profession you have their support in being able to take this to the policymaker or the administrator and say, no, we need to do it this way because this is what the profession knows. It's not just a belief, it's what the profession knows and values. Gabby, your turn.
I was going to add one more thing that the affiliates can do with the agenda, and that is to talk about it and share with other maybe stakeholders that they interact with their partners. And so that's the easy thing is to talk about something, and then the harder thing is to carry it out. But starting with talking about it, maybe will people have move forward. Well, that was just a little joke that I felt like I needed to share because just talking about the agenda itself, I think it's actually moving the profession forward. Now maybe getting you to the agenda. There are 2 versions that you can actually download, and this is for that talking about the agenda or sharing it with your fellow leaders in your affiliate and colleagues and professionals. When you see on the left, there's an executive summary, which is the 3-page document that synthesizes the priorities and the action steps in a very nice way with that brief introduction. And then it's a very powerful document. The size and the content is nicely put together. If you want to have a deeper dive into the action agenda, there's a longer document that's around 30 pages and has all the things that both of us have been talking about in more detail and And maybe we're going to move on to doing a little formative assessment here, how we've been reaching our goals. And we're going to do another poll. Maybe we'll get more answers this time. There are 6 questions that you're looking at. Most of them are addressed in the agenda, but there is one that is not. And our question is, which one is not addressed by the agenda? Which of the 6 questions you will not find an answer to in the agenda? Yeah, I'm going to give you a minute to get familiar with the questions. And if you're ready to answer, use the chat box on your screen. George, thank you for responding. What? Thinking. Okay. So people think it's E. Anna thinks it's E. Anybody else? E. And E is correct. Everybody is getting an A, but the answer is E. Yes, it's passing. But I actually think that if affiliates and professional associations carry out the action steps, they will become visible, and it will make the profession more visible. And then maybe more people will be drawn to the associations as the leaders, as entities that have the knowledge, and people will look up to the associations. Yes, exactly, Laura. Thank you for adding it. Yes. So it is E. But if we think beyond and open our minds, we can see that that question may be answered by us carrying out those actions. And maybe before we get to the question and answers, let me direct you to a couple more resources that are available. The action agenda, you can download the summary, the executive summary, and then the full version of the agenda on the TESOL website. But you can also go back to the summit resources. You can watch the contributions by the different speakers on the 4 themes that Denise has mentioned. You can also see George, I think, in the videos. And among other things, there are materials that can help you to organize your little small summit. So there are questions and areas that were discussed in different groups throughout the summit. And if you decide to hold your own little summit or address some of these issues, those materials can be very useful to you. So there's 2 places where you can get to the agenda or resources around the agenda. And as I said, they're both available on the TESOL website. And George says that he's a lot on those videos. Yes, he is. He was a great moderator of the whole summit. and it was a joy to learn with you, George, then, and even tonight. So maybe it's time to get to question and answer time. Right, Denise?
Right. Yes.
If you have a question about a topic agenda, please type your question in the chat box. Thank you, Laurie, or thank you.
If you're not a great typist, you can always speak it if you want to.
Denise, are you going to address George's question, or should I?
Well, okay. Well, TAs, are you talking about TA training? Or are you talking about the TAs themselves? And I'm not sure.
Teacher associations.
Oh, teacher. Thank you. I thought you were referring to TAs in the teaching assistants. That's the usual use in the States. Sorry. So what was your question? So do you think that we can have any specific action that TAs can implement? Well, yes. I mean, certainly some of the advocacy issues of talking to policymakers about things in the action agenda that would, let me give you an example. It's an old example, but California TESOL, there was no credential certification for teachers of English as a second language. And the association wanted to fight for that. And the action agenda would have been perfect for us to argue for that. We didn't have it at the time, but that would have been the perfect example to be able to take to policymakers and say, this is what the profession says, is that teachers need to have training in the field of TESOL in order to be able to teach English language learners. So, I mean, that's one clear example. Another would be that if you take one of the other priorities of visibility, TAs can write, teaching associations can write letters for the newspaper, letters to the editor, or on blogs that our local. We have a local internet sort of neighborhood watch type of thing to talk on that about learning a language and whether a child it's okay for the child to use their own language in the classroom, for example, to try and diffuse and debunk the myths out there about language and language learning. So those are the sorts of things that the Teachers Association can do to raise the awareness of A, the association, B, the profession, and C, trying to move the agenda so that best practice is practiced in your particular country or region or whatever.
I would maybe add to it, going back to the knowledge base, I myself, that's where I would start here in the Czech Republic. How much of the knowledge base, which is the foundation that's given before we move forward, using the knowledge base as a starting point and then looking at the agenda where where there's inspiration for which direction we could take this or take the areas that are not fully acknowledged in our context. So that's one of the things that I'm planning on doing here in the Czech Republic. So depending on and I think Denise pointed this out earlier, that it really depends on our unique context and settings and what is available. We can start somewhere definitely. what we have to assess are our situation and our current needs, and I think they're very diverse, as diverse the affiliates are and all our teaching contexts. But I can see a question by Anna about sharing the TESOL agenda with colleagues. Definitely, yes. Posting a link to the TESOL, the agenda, definitely. Although it's a document that has been sponsored by TESOL International Association, it is not meant to be only be for TESOL International Association. It is a document. It's for our profession, and there was a number of other organizations, and Denise probably will remember those better, that were involved in planning and carrying out the summit. So definitely, this is a public document, and it's there to serve our profession and move all people around the world who are in the profession forward. I don't know, Denise, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, and when the discussions were going on around the world, we did not exclude people who were not TESOL International members. You had to sign up to participate, but you didn't have to become a member of TESOL International, because this was meant to be for the profession, writ absolutely as large as you can imagine it. And as Gabby said, yes, we did have, we had a reference group, and that group included representatives from testing companies, from publishers, from associations that were somewhat similar, like teachers unions, the TURF, the International Research Foundation, trying to think of what else, bilingual educators, a whole bunch of other professionals who are sort of sisters in a way, or brothers in a way. They are tangentially related in some way. The Association for Foreign Languages in the United States, we had a bunch of people like that. So this is meant to be distributed, used as broadly as possible. The one thing we don't want is for it to, quote, sit on the shelf. Not that it sits on the shelf, it sits in digital format. But being in digital format, it means it's easy for people to be able to just access it. And on the slide that Gabby had previous to this one, it had exactly how you can get that. So please give it to everybody. Give it to your mother, your aunt, your grandmother. Have a conversation about language and what it means to teach a language, because that's what's missing in the broader world outside of our closed field. We need to influence people.
Do we have any more questions?
Well, maybe we could have a last question. Do you think that you could use this in your affiliate? Would it be useful? And you don't have to say yes just because we're here. It's a genuine question. I'm curious.
You can use all the other words that express yes, like Ali, thank you for saying absolutely. Definitely. Nobody's following Denise's instructions. Yes or no. Okay. I'm tempted to say, again, one more thing is that although we are all members of affiliates, we are also in our own context. I am a teacher educator, and there are some of these things that I can implement and carry out in my own department. So although this webinar was for affiliates, I think all of us wear multiple hats, and it's not only the affiliates themselves that can benefit from the agenda, as you already said, but even if you work in teacher preparation programs, there are lots of points that you can address and bring to your program to innovate and make the culture of innovation present in your department.
Valerie has just put down that one of those links may not work, and she's given a full link there. So you
I tested those, but
okay.
Yeah. The TESOLSummit.org changes into something else once you put it in. it redirects automatically to the website of the summit, which is hosted on the TESOL website.
I'm just trying to read people's comments. Yes, I think Natasha makes sorry, no, Natasha, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your name, but I think you made a good point that to help people understand it may take a lot of work, which is why I suggested that maybe a first dive into it is just looking at a priority and looking at the action items of just one of the priorities that you think is the easiest for people to get their head around, and go through, do we do this? What do we do that's like this? Why don't we do it? Ask those very simple questions rather than having people read the whole thing to begin with. I mean, it's everything in it is valuable, but the executive summary can be a very useful jumping off point to start with. Anybody else got some concerns? Happy to take them. Yes, help with strategic planning, certainly. Right. Deborah Short had an interesting one of teacher associations could have a strand dedicated to action research, or any one of the items here, just have a strand related to that. So, I mean, it's huge in one sense, but in another, as I said, you don't have to do everything at once. It's something that you can keep dipping into and using in the future. And you could even have people watch some of the presentations from the summit and talk about that. They're very short. They're like TED Talks. So well, I think we are just about through time.
Hey, George has a question. Is there any other event that will take place for the action agenda?
Oh, yes, Gabby, you can answer that.
TESOL will be hosting a session in Denver where we'll be sharing what we've done with the agenda in different contexts. So there will be examples how the action agenda was taken by affiliates, by different professionals, and so you can see, you'll be able to see it on the program. It will be TESOL sponsor session in Denver. Laura has a question. If you could have action agenda events at your regional conferences.
Sure.
Maybe while we're waiting, maybe if there's any other comment, I want to point out that if anybody has any additional questions, you can email anybody on this webinar, Denise, myself, or Valerie, or George, and we'll be happy to answer them if we can.
And with that, we must conclude today's online program. A special thank you to our presenters, Gabby and Denise. And also want to remind everyone that the recording of today's session will be available by probably tomorrow. And we'll be sending those out to the affiliate network, and you're welcome to share it beyond. And that concludes our program. Thank you so much. You may now disconnect.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.